As a waist-down paraplegic since my accident last year, how has it been getting around? Every spinal cord injury is different, and with mine, I've got some feeling on my legs above my ankles, better on my left side. I've recently got some hip movement, even some slight upper leg, but I cannot stand. Transfers aren't a problem, and I don't get tired pushing the wheelchair around. Several kilometres a day is quite normal, and I've never had sore arms the next day. I don't get spasms, which some people use to their advantage, but I'm happy not to get them. Neuropathic pain is mostly just annoying. I've never needed to take any drugs. The most annoying thing is bladder leaks when I'm doing transfers, which I manage with rags and bags. In this video, I'll talk about the following. My first travel, 3 weeks post-accident, across the world in Emirates business class was rather expensive, but we needed to do it that way to get permission to get out of the hospital. The next trip was also between hospitals when 6 weeks post-accident we opted to go to New Zealand for rehabilitation. I didn't have a wheelchair yet, so we arranged to get the airport one, so I could leave the hospital one there after transferring into the car with my mum and sister. Mum came with me, but I didn't need medical assistance on the plane. From then on, I'd travel in my own wheelchair, which is easier because you can be independent right up to the boarding gate. Here they'll put you on a little wheelchair that fits down the aisle in the plane. You either do this on the air bridge or on a container that moves to the plane and rises up to the door. Sometimes you get on first, sometimes not, but you're always last to get off. Airlines don't charge you any extra to take the wheelchair. It actually makes being a bit on the heavy side with baggage less stressful, but you need to let them know in the booking, usually 48 hours before. If you can't figure out how to do it when you book, the easiest, Google the airline name and wheelchair. Sometimes I've had to phone the airline, and that can take a while, so it's definitely easier if you can do it when you first book it. I like sitting by the window, and this is possible more times than not, but I just ask when I check in. And I'm not sure if there's any point checking in early online, as I'll just go and see them at the airport anyway. The perks of being in a wheelchair. At the airport, you're not expected to queue. It could take a while to get through security. I usually just sit there and do what they tell me to. I'd say that's the best policy. Sometimes I've transferred off my chair to take off the underseat bag. Other times I've reached through my legs to empty it into a container. I often don't need to worry about check-in baggage, as I can take everything I need hanging off the back of the chair and on my lap. By the time you get off the plane, everyone has got their baggage already. Don't worry too much about anything, as everyone wants to help you and no one wants a drama. On my first big trip, travelling independently with my girlfriend, they didn't really figure out getting me off the plane when we passed through Bali, so I stayed on board. I wasn't too concerned, but I can't feel my bladder, so I thought I should probably empty it just in case. I discreetly did that when alone in my seat, into a bottle, as the cleaners were up the aisle. I was really concerned about some small skin damage on my bum, a spinal issue which can be really bad and get you stuck in a bed for a long time. So mine hadn't healed for over a month, but it had come good just in time. Now I usually sit on this Roho cushion on top of the seat. It expands as the cabin air pressure drops, but I think it's fine. I use it for gliding as well. Sometimes it feels really uncomfortable, but it can be hard to figure out how much of it is psychological. If I happen to have a free seat beside me, I'll take advantage by leaning over to one side for a while. I've done quite a bit of flying now, and overall the aviation industry is well trained and I've never had a problem getting around. They have specialised crew at the airport to help, and you can tell them that you don't need help until the gate. A couple of times in Amsterdam we nearly came unstuck. The wheelchair crew just came over and said that actually we weren't in the system, but they put me in there. It should be done when you check in, but I guess it wasn't that time. Another time when I didn't know I'd be in a wheelchair when I turned up to check in, or they didn't know, but I could show them that I at least tried to email them in my sent messages, and they were able to figure it out for me. So my tips are, firstly, try and indicate on the booking that you are going to take a wheelchair. For example, with Ryanair, you can't do it on the app, you need to use the webpage. Secondly, at the check-in, just confirm that they know you need assistance at the gate and have a game plan. And thirdly, try to touch base with the wheelchair crew at the airport. Trains. Okay, you should treat them like planes if they're longer distance. So when you make a booking, indicate the wheelchair on there as you do it. It could be pretty tricky trying to figure it out afterwards. The general rule is that the more local the transport is, the better chance it is wheelchair adapted. In Brisbane, the City Train network was excellent. You just turn up and they know what to do. They ask what station you're going to and everything is organised. Some stations you don't even need a ramp if you're at a middle carriage, but they'll usually be there anyway. In Madrid, we had a nightmare with the fast train to Valencia, where they simply wouldn't let me on. Even if I thought I could get on without help, no. If I'd have known, they have a special wheelchair crew that said in fact they could have helped me with a few minutes notice, but it was too late and I had to buy tickets for another train. Definitely it's worth getting to the train station a little earlier than you normally would, and you start to keep an eye out for the office where you can go in and request help. They often won't help order days in advance or whatever. Spanish mentality sometimes isn't very helpful, but usually I manage these days. In Valencia, we once went to get a train around about 50 k's away, and the staff was so incredible that they got us on the train somehow after just turning up at the station a few minutes between buying tickets and the train arriving, and yeah, we got on. In Provence, you're supposed to book by the telephone, but it's all very confusing and doesn't necessarily work very well. The French usually understand how bad the system is, and they're generally more open to bending the rules. In Aix-en-Provence, we didn't have a booking and the train wasn't really suitable and the elevator was broken, but they took us around the platform, over the tracks, hoisted us onto the train, and even then let us have the discounted ticket on board. You're supposed to have a special wheelchair card, apparently. The platform where we got off wasn't really suitable, but again, they made it work. In the Netherlands, the public transport is excellent, but about half and half adapted for wheelchair use. You can either look for the sprinter trains, where you can just hop on yourself, or telephone at least an hour ahead so the crew with the ramps can assist you. Basically, some trains have big steps and others don't, and it's a similar story with the trams. An alternative to trains for routes between cities is buses, like Flixbus. Basically, their policy is sensible. If you can get on and off the bus, no worries, they'll take your wheelchair. So you just need to figure out if that'll work for you. Longer distance buses tend to have steps on the platform above, so there's room for the baggage underneath. In Provence, it's sort of the same, but not really. They want you to book ahead so they can organise you with their U-Butte levitating platform, then strap your wheelchair in. But what really ties you down is deciding 48 hours ahead which bus you'll catch. Having to deal with their telephone system is awful. When I first tried to use it, despite email messages saying that I had, the voyage, it didn't get through to the driver, but I made him let me on anyway. Another time the driver had an alarmed look when he saw me coming with the wheelchair, but I gave him the "no worries, I've done this before" look, and it was all good. People always want to help you, but they can be worried about liability. Mostly, local transport is fine for wheelchairs without a booking. There are exceptions, but generally it's not too bad. It was surprising that at Sydney Airport, the bus between the terminals was not equipped, but the assistant radioed in another bus which arrived after a short wait. A lot of local buses have a low floor and often have a ramp which swings down onto the ground. There's priority areas for wheelchairs and steps to raise seats at the back of the bus above the engine. In Valencia, you need to get in at the back, so it's worth getting eye contact with the driver as they pull in. And once on, there's a button there for you to press so he knows to put the ramp down for you to disembark. Similar in the Netherlands, although once or twice I've got in or out without the ramp, with a wheelie or backwards. It depends if the curb helps you make it a small step. Getting out of the bus on the way to Amsterdam Airport, it was early in the morning and I forgot about the freewheel on the back. This can make wheelies dangerous because even though it's a nicer way to go down a ramp on a wheelie, this time it kicked me off the front. They were pretty worried about it, but I explained how it happened and it wasn't the first time. I took a bus in Dubai and for sure the public transport is a lot easier there than going by car. No transfers required, and yes, the bus was rather slow, like cars with city traffic, but the metro works brilliantly. There's even a chance to use the escalator as well, as you saw before. Some places block it off though. There is a metro in Valencia too, and it works great, although sometimes the elevator is broken. My preferred technique in this case is to hustle up a crew to help lift me up the stairs. This first happened in a train station outside Nice, I believe. But if the girlfriend is with you, she might get a little embarrassed or flustered. Taxis and cars are fine if my incontinence system is working, but that's another good reason for the Roho cushion. The best is if the seat height is similar. In vans or SUVs, you might need to make a half step to get in. The physios always prefer a push to a pull, and I usually do, but I think as long as you do it smoothly and controlled, you reduce the risk of hurting yourself. Certainly your arms and shoulders become more critical when they've basically all you've got. I've hitched a lift with another paraplegic before, and we know it's not a problem to ask a passerby to get out your wheelchair when you need it at the other end. Electric scooter. You see a lot of wheelchair users in Valencia and elsewhere with these, and they make getting around a lot quicker. I tried one and it's fast, but you have traction trouble going uphill, and of course it's not as manoeuvrable. I think for the type of use for me, I'll do without, but I thought a standard scooter might be a good compromise. I've thought about sliding the back wheel under and then doing a wheelie to get on, and you don't need a special attachment point. The great advantage is that others can use it too, and if they do, hold on for a tow. The bike tow is my favourite, and it was a highlight converting my old e-bike into a she-bike. Pushing myself around the streets, well, anything is better than Mum's driveway. The freewheel would have been good for that, but it turned up when it was time to leave. I don't mind a few features to work around with wheelies and so on. In Amsterdam, the footpaths were like in wavy shapes, like up and down, so it made things interesting. Valencia is dead flat, so I can't complain, but sometimes the little inclines give a little bit of variety. The tiles in Valencia vibrate the hell out of my legs, and that causes annoying neuropathic pain, usually quite bearable though. In Dubai especially, people were so keen to help you, and there was the odd curb where I needed a bit of a push for, but sometimes it was a challenge to politely decline. Like going down a curb, I really didn't want help. No, really, I don't. Really. You can't be annoyed by this. It's great to give people something interesting in their day, and sometimes I pretend that I could do with a bit of help. You know, the best way to be happy is to help someone else. Curb drops you are generally better doing on your own. From a door frame, you can use that and go backwards if it's a big one, or up, and it's a lot easier than trying to push the wheels. With some momentum you can get up curbs, but higher ones I'll ask around for a push. It wasn't hard, especially in Dubai. In Europe people are a bit more reserved, which can be nice, but of course everywhere people will help you if you ask. Narrow gaps? Well, that's why they have the special aisle chairs for the plane. Sometimes you just can't get through. It can happen for narrow doors and toilets. You always want to keep your hands free so they don't get jammed. We get wheelchairs made to size, and it comes down to the size of your hips. Doors are generally easy because you can pull on the frame with your arms, as long as they're wide enough. Often there's a step there, and of course that can complicate things. If you have to go up steps while pushing a door, you might need help. Escalators are fun because you get the most shocked expressions from onlookers. Most people have never seen it. Steep hills or ramps are a problem because we have to get our body weight forward. The wheelchair is designed to tip with a flick so we can get our small wheels over bumps so they can fall backwards. Rough ground is possible without a freewheel, but much easier if you have one. It lifts up your small wheels so you can coast over the bumps, and it means that you don't get stuck having no traction on your main wheels, losing steering. Sand is even possible with the freewheel. People always think you need thicker tyres, but I'd rather not carry around extra wheels. Generally, there's a lot of tricks to get around in a wheelchair, and to get to the advanced level, you just need to do steps. Something I've done, very laborious, once in rehab, but I've got a pretty good excuse for avoiding that kind of thing with the bladder leaks. I've been travelling independently and with my girlfriend, but the recent experience in Dubai was a little different. We had a whole crew of paragliding competitors and the entourage heading out to a different location for the day on the bus. Getting on the bus, this kind of crew, who is used to taking on a challenge and problem solving, they could be very helpful. Yet they also had people skills, knowing not to be over helpful. In fact, physical effort was not the problem, it was figuring out how to do it in a way which minimised bladder leaks, something which happens a lot more on big steps. A lot of these guys have had close calls in the past with spinal injuries, and they were super understanding of any issues I might have had. In fact, everyone is, and for me, if I just take that for granted and don't worry about it too much, it makes life much easier. People see the obvious when you're in a wheelchair. You can't walk. With my spinal injury, bowels, bladder and sexual function is also affected. I would definitely take those back before I worried about the muscles in my legs. They have already had a good run. In my life, I got around a lot, and I really never liked walking that much anyway. Home sweet home. Oh, leaving the clothes on the bed didn't work for not getting them to like it. Handy seat for the shower. I might have one later on.